The English people, they're really proud, and so like quite often you'll joke around with them about just history and things like that. At one point they ruled the world, now they really don't, and things like that. So you get to have a lot of fun conversations with them about that. But they're proud of their like heritage, where they've come from, and a lot of what they're doing. So that's definitely something you can always strike a conversation about. They like to talk about the weather and generally complain about it, but it rains every day, so it's really easy just to be like, oh, it's raining again, and instant conversation on a bus, and you can just go from there. In England, I'd say the culture, it's got a huge Christian background, but it's slowly starting to go to the wayside. A lot of Catholic and Church of England influence, but they've been fighting over all the centuries, and now the youth of today in England, I would say, generally aren't very religious. They're kind of going downhill, and they need a lot of help, and so they're the people that'll talk to you the most are young adults, but quite often you really have to work with them to get their interest and to help them to see where they can go. But I would say that's one of the biggest groups that ends up getting baptized in the mission is like young single adults, and then families as well. We find quite a few of them. They won't call it dinner time or supper or whatever other American terms use. It's called tea. So if you get there and your trainer's like, all right, we got a tea appointment at 5 o'clock, you're not going to break the word of wisdom, don't worry. Tea just means dinner. And so you'll go somewhere and have tea, you just eat dinner. That's one of the most asked questions out there, I think. Is it okay if we go to tea? Yeah, it's fine, don't worry. One advice I would give you is, I don't know, YouTube some like ideas on how to have proper etiquette. Because when I hit the MTC, one of my good friends, his name was Elder Bruder, or Hustis, he watched all of us Americans sitting there eating away and stuff, and he's like, I'm not letting you go into Europe eating like that. So he sat there and he's like, all right, you hold the knife in this hand, you hold the fork in this hand, the knife in this hand, and he taught us how to eat properly. And most members are pretty relaxed and don't care, but if you're in investigators' homes or in members that are a bit more traditional, you need to know how to eat properly, and it's actually pretty effective. So that's something I do, is like learn how to eat the British style. There's probably YouTube videos, I'm sure, about it, so look it up, figure it out. But that's something that could save you a lot of time and a lot of white shirts, because at first I couldn't even like hit my mouth with my left hand, so I got lasagna all over my white shirt. It was a mess. So that's something you could do. A lot of them just kind of fall under being a missionary, being dignified, and so like shake people's hands, be courteous, be on time, definitely be on time. But for the most part, English people are pretty laid back. You're not really going to offend them easily. Just be polite. Use appropriate language. If you're using dignified language, you're never going to have a problem offending people. And so just keep that in mind. Generally take your shoes off when you go in their home, and just be polite in general. There's not anything in particular that'll really offend them or upset them that I can think of.
When I initially went over, I didn't think that the culture would be that different. And it's not drastically different, but it is, you do have to adjust to it. The British people very much do have their own way, and it's different than Americans. I think the biggest thing, let's see, I served for the majority of my mission in Yorkshire County, and each county that you go to has little different cultures and accents and things like that. And so I think in general, on the whole island of Britain, they start to get friendlier the farther north you go. And I saw that a little bit. Maybe people in Britain would disagree, but mostly there is a cultural divide between Northerners and Southerners. And I didn't interact that much with Southerners, but I did notice that it got friendlier the farther north you went. Something funny in the Yorkshire area, and kind of in the general England Leeds mission, is they'll call you, they have kind of like pet names, like they'll call you Love or Pet or Flower, and there's a few other ones, like, and when you're walking down the street, and it took me a while to kind of pick this up. For the first little while, I kept going around saying, like, hi, how are you doing? And they don't really say that. Like when you're in the street and you're greeting someone, it's, hi, are you alright? Or, are you alright, love? And so you kind of you start picking that up, and you just try to join in. And then just riding, we rode the bus a lot. And of course they're double-decker buses, the ones you see in London. They have those in the north too, and that's a little bit different. And when you get off the bus, you always say ta, which just means thank you. So ta love, and so that's something that's colloquial as well. And so just little things like that were kind of fun. I remember when I got home from my mission, my family thought that I sounded British. I mean, of course, to the British people, I didn't. I still sounded very much American. But you, as your mission progresses, you pick up the different intonation that British people have. So, for example, when they ask a question, they'll say, "Are you going to church today?" Rather than, "Are you going to church today?" And I don't know if you can hear it, but it's a little bit different. You go up and then down, and so it's just little things like that, I think, make you start to sound kind of British, as well as the terms. I think in general, English people are more reserved, but that's less so in the north. I think people will talk to you on the street and on the bus and things, and I think that probably is harder down in London and in the south. But sometimes people are a little more suspicious of strangers. Like, I remember my companion and I knocked on this. It was like a little circle street. It was kind of a weird area. But almost every house we knocked on, you try to be friendly and ask their name and try to get a foot in the door, I guess. And almost every person on this street was like, "Why do you want to know our name?" Or, like, just very suspicious. But in general, the people of the north are really friendly and they'll talk to you.
They do like to complain, but it's a part of their sense of humor. That's one of the things that a word for it is like cheeky. And I can't really explain it, but when you start meeting English people, you'll understand what it means. They're so funny. And I think that's why they complain a lot, but it's generally in humor, and everyone's just laughing a lot. They'll like tease each other. Take the mick is what they say, is like tease each other a lot. And everyone just laughs all the time, and that's how you make great friends, is just having a bit of a sense of humor. That's one thing I love about English people. And they're generally nice. They're very friendly. Like, you do have the crazy people that'll swear at you and all that sort of stuff, but that's wherever you go in the world. But for the most part, English people are polite, they're kind, and they're willing to hear a little bit at least. And if you can get their interest, they're willing to know a lot more. And generally speaking, when you like meet someone who's like a proper British person, they're good on their word. So if they say they're going to do something, they will. And that's something, having dependability is really important as well.
The culture in England it's weird how similar it is, but also how very, very different it is from America. Everything's smaller there and more compact, and people are a lot more polite, like reserved polite. Here, people are nice, but they're very outgoing and nice. Like, it's very rare for English people to start conversations with strangers, which is probably why they thought that missionaries are kind of weird. But they have a kind of a different sense of humor. I think American humor and English humor are both funny. English people don't think American humor is funny, but they like their own humor. So you just gotta figure out how to cater to that. They're just a little more dry. I had a bishop that I was scared to death of for like 3 weeks because I didn't know that he was joking in almost everything he said, because he said it so seriously. But then I realized that he wasn't being serious at all. So you just have to learn how to read the people. Like, there's a different accent. Like, every 30 minutes there's like different accents. And if you can learn how to place accents, you'll be people's best friend. Like, as soon as you start talking to someone, "Oh, are you from up north? Like, you sound like it. That's great. Like, how's it up there?" I felt like it was a good finding tool. When people know that you know where they're from or a little bit about what they're about, they seem to appreciate that. Before my mission, even before my call, I watched a lot of British television. So I feel like the accent wasn't super hard for me to pick up. Some of their phrases were a little difficult, and if you get someone from like way up north in Scotland, it's almost impossible to understand them. But I don't think English people can even understand them, so I didn't feel too bad about that. I just found accents from not England, like from not English speaking countries, were hard on the phone. So if we had an investigator that was like not a native and we were talking on the phone, I'd just hand it to my trainer and be like, I don't understand what he's talking about. But after a while, like, you get used to it. So many Africans, yeah, which I loved. Like, I knew I was supposed to be called to the London mission, but if I could have been called anywhere else, it would have been Africa. And I'm so glad that I got to be in the London mission because it was like basically half Africa. I love all the people in my mission, but I grew like a special love for Ghanaians and Nigerians. Like, they are the greatest people, so welcoming, so loving, and they just love Jesus. It was the greatest.
So London, it's quite a spread city. It's quite easy to get around. Like, they have a tube system, so they call it the tube. It's a subway, but their bus system is fantastic as well. And let's see, it's amazing. It's gorgeous. Everything in London is just amazing. But it's very diverse. London, you'll find every type of person there. I worked in an area, and it's called Ilford, and it's in East London. And all the people are either from Pakistan or India or in the Middle East somewhere. So it's very, very diverse, and there's certain places that are all Africans. There's certain places that are from the Caribbean. And I think that's one of the things that I really loved the most, is meeting so many different types of cultures.
Culture. England is a very interesting place culturally because it's moving in a very secular direction and has been in the past 10, 20 years. Yet again, there are a lot of culture that are still instilled in the people. For example, the English always, or the British always want to be properest, as we say it. And you can see that in the small snippets of life. For example, the English are very good with their knives and the forks. I mean, here in the States, we usually kind of just use the fork just to eat. Maybe if we're eating a steak, we'll use a knife. But in England, it's always two hands, and they just go at it. It's left and right, left and right. So that's an interesting snippet of culture that you can still see of their properness coming through in modern life. You know, some of you may be asked to learn how to drive in England, and it's definitely an experience. Because England, from what I gather, has one of the hardest driving exams in the world. I remember in the States, you know, the night before my practical test, my mom was like, son, you should learn how to parallel park. I said, Mom, I got this. I can imagine it in my head. You just go back it up, you turn right and turn left, and just real quick, just park in that spot. And the next day I was the practical, and after 2 tries, the examiner was just stop it. There's people behind you, and I still passed the exam in the States. In England, that will not happen. That will not happen. If you touch the curb one time, or just the point system is much more difficult. The written test is a 2-part. There's a visual part you have to click to make sure your reaction is right. So learn how to parallel park in the States if you can, or wherever you're from, because you will, yeah, and it's very expensive in England. So it's not the most important thing, but a fun fact / thing to do to prepare to come to England. You will learn how to use a map and take the bus, because that's what you will do for 2 years or 1.5 years, the sisters. And wow, that was a very interesting experience. I wish I paid better attention during Boy Scouts, during the orientation merit badge. So that's definitely something I have to get accustomed to take the buses. But then again, you know, you're in a confined space. There are people who are not members of the church. What do? You talk to them to the gospel. So if you think preaching the gospel is awkward on a street where there's open space, just imagine how awkward it may be inside a confined space such as a bus. But if one could preach the gospel in a confined space, bus contact, a person could do anything with another person. That is just the refiner's fire for interpersonal communication. So you will come back and they should just have a 16 credit exam you could take to get a communications class. It definitely felt like as a missionary, the British people were very into their holidays. Maybe not so much maybe the religious aspect that's tied with it, but definitely the festivity. It's definitely celebrated there. Actually, yeah, definitely. Now I remind during Christmas time, it's really all out. I mean, it's what you expect here in the States, but as well a bit more. In England, during Christmas, I remember there are toys. I forgot what it's called, but it's kind of shaped like a big candy, and there's two handles at the end, and two people pull, and a prize would come out, and and I think it would come out to one side or something like that. So people always wish that they would get the one side with the prize, and inside there is usually a paper crown, and you put on your head during your Christmas meal. So that's a festive part. British lifestyle. Let's see. I think living in England really helped me appreciate America, because a lot of times it's easier to contrast, to say, hey, for example, America and China is completely different. America and Brazil is completely different, and if you factor in the language and the culture. But whereas England, it's a lot closer. I mean, other than Canada, of course, although we speak the same language and we mostly have the same roots, or a lot of times have the same roots, the standard of living is completely different. To give a contrast, for example, a steak here in the States is like what, $5, $6, $7 a pound, but in England, if you convert it back to U.S. currency, a steak would be $12, $13, $14 a pound. So with that, life is a lot more expensive than England. In England, soccer in England or in the UK is going to be called football, and sometimes you talk to people on the street, you ask them what they believe. Sometimes they get a bit smart alecky and they tell you, I believe in football, and you think they're kidding, but really football or soccer is really big in the UK. If you ever served in Manchester, there's a possibility that you may live in an apartment that could actually, it's about a block or two behind the United, what is that called? The United Teams Stadium, Man U Stadium. And it's funny because it's so big that on game days, one, the bus route changes just to accommodate the buckets of people coming to this arena, and two, because we had to have this special permit to park in front of our place, but one reason or another, we couldn't get that permit. So on game days, we actually have to park our own car in the nearest chapel and walk back to our apartments. So maybe because of that, I'm not the biggest game of football, but definitely football is a big thing in England, and it's very difficult trying to speak to people when it's the World Cup or a big game is going on. The World Cup, like mentioned before, it's a big deal and everybody's watching it, and we're actually fortunate to allow to watch an hour of it, or a match. We could pick our team, because about half our missionaries are international, and yeah, sometimes we have to adjust our schedules according to it. Maybe if there's a big matches going on, that's when we're going to take our dinner or lunch breaks, because no one's going to want their door to be knocked on during those times. And they did have a few Olympic matches in the Man U Stadium, Manchester United Stadium, where I live pretty close, and you could hear the cheer. And we were doing planning, but we were to keep our head down, do the work.
First holiday that comes to mind is Pancake Day. English pancakes are a little bit different. They're very similar to crepes, but they are different. And it's it's just a holiday that's associated with a saint. So you just have this Pancake Day. That one's kind of fun. They have Boxing Day. That's also different. That's the day after Christmas, and people do a lot of shopping on Boxing Day. Some do's and don'ts. Pants. There's also some words there that you shouldn't say, that are swear words there. So I guess I can say them now. Buddy, bugger. Don't say those. Those are very bad. As far as that, I mean, the culture it's different. There's a lot of walking, like I said. The city's just built differently. The landscape and the city planning is different, and so that's something that's probably in my mind, that's the biggest difference, at least for missionaries, because as a missionary you're on the streets a lot, and so that makes a big difference. There's people walking around a lot, which is a good thing, and so other than that, I like nothing too big. There's not too big a difference, except for the fact that there are so many different cultures there. There's people from all around the world, and so you really get to know a little bit about everybody's culture, and nothing, because they are all in England. I guess maybe they don't hold you to the same standards as maybe they would in their own country, but you do get to have a feel for how they live, and that's something I loved about our mission, is that there's this, I got to teach people from Africa, from Asia, from India, from from South America even. At one point in my mission, I counted up the countries that I taught people from, and I had been out for about just around 14 or 15 months, and I think I taught people from 49 different countries. And it's really, really awesome how many people there are.